Across North America, there are thousands of massive earth mounds and countless intricate copper artifacts. The skill it took to make them is just undeniable. But for a long time, who actually made them was a total mystery. And that mystery, well, it gave birth to a powerful myth, a story of phantom smiths and a lost race that for decades totally erased the true and, frankly, a far more incredible history. Okay, so let's just dive right in. Picture this. It's the 1800s. Euro-American settlers are pushing west, and they start coming across these incredible structures. We're talking towering mounds, huge geometric earthworks, and all these finely crafted metal objects. The first, most obvious question on everyone's mind was, who on earth could have built all this? And the answer that really caught fire, the one that spread everywhere? Well, it sure wasn't the people they were actively displacing from that very land. No. It had to be someone else. A vanished, somehow superior civilization. Some people even started fantasizing that it was a lost race of giants. And look, this idea wasn't just some campfire story. It actually grew into this powerful narrative that we now call the mound builder myth. And it's a really fascinating and honestly a disturbing example of how a story can be created to serve a specific purpose, even if it means erasing a real history in the process. So the whole point of the myth was basically this. The settlers just could not, or, would not, believe that the ancestors of the Native Americans they were fighting with were capable of these amazing feats of engineering. So a very convenient theory was born. It said that a lost race of brilliant people built everything, and then they were wiped out by these supposedly more primitive native groups who came later. This story wasn't just a quirky idea, it became a really powerful political tool. But here's the thing, while this whole myth was being spun, the real story was literally waiting in the ground, forged in metal. To get to the truth, we just have to follow the trail of all these copper artifacts, right back to their source, the incredibly rich, pure deposits around Lake Superior. And what is just mind-blowing is the timeline we're talking about here. This isn't just a couple of centuries. The copper mining on Isle Royale, it started over 4,500 years ago. This was a continuous technological tradition that spanned millennia, fueling trade networks across the entire continent and hitting its peak with the spectacular copperwork of the great city of Cahokia. This map gives you a sense of the sheer scale of this operation. This is just one area on Isle Royale. Ancient indigenous miners left behind thousands of pits just like these, painstakingly following the veins of copper. This was not some casual hobby. This was a systematic, multi-generational industry. Now, the secret ingredient, the key to this entire industry, was the material itself, native copper. It's a type of metal that's found in nature in an almost pure state, and that meant it could be worked without all the complex, high-temperature technology of smelting. All you really needed were stone hammers, a good fire, and an incredible amount of skill. Okay, so they had the perfect raw material. But the big question is still, how in the world did they turn a rough, lumpy nugget into a paper-thin sheet embossed with these complex designs? Well, the answer lies in the secrets of the ancient smiths, secrets that were unlocked by modern science. Metallurgical analysis revealed this absolutely brilliant two-step cycle. First, you hammer the copper at room temperature. That's called cold hammering. It shapes the metal, but it also makes it really hard and brittle. So to keep working it, you do step 2, annealing. You just heat the hardened copper up in a fire, and like magic, it softens and becomes workable again. By just repeating this cycle, hammer, heat, artisans could create just incredible things. And here is the hard evidence, the smoking gun. On the left, you've got some raw copper fragments from a workshop at the ancient city of Cahokia. On the right, that's what they look like under a microscope. You see that beautiful recrystallized grain structure? That is the unmistakable fingerprint of annealing. It's the hidden proof of this sophisticated process locked right inside the metal itself. And here's the kicker. This whole process didn't require some lost high-tech furnace. The research shows that the temperatures you need for annealing are easily reached in a simple open wood fire. It's a total testament to ingenuity, not to some lost technology. It's all about a deep, deep knowledge of materials. This incredible mastery of the metal raised another big question for the metallurgists. So we know they could make these impossibly thin sheets, but could they actually join them? I mean, could they weld multiple sheets together to create even larger, more complex objects? And, the theory was tempting because some of the artifacts really did look layered or laminated. But when the science came in, the answer was a definite no. When you heat copper in an open fire, This thin layer of oxidation forms on the surface, and that layer basically acts as a barrier, making it physically impossible for two sheets to weld together. So what were people actually seeing? Well, the answer was right back in the original raw material. The intense hammering process had simply flattened out all the natural little pores and bumps in the copper nuggets, which created the illusion of different layers. Okay, so let's step back for a second. We now have this really clear scientific picture of an ancient, sophisticated, and completely indigenous American technology. Which brings us all the way back to our original question. Why was this reality so inconvenient that a whole myth had to be invented to cover it up? Well, the purpose was brutally simple, and it was political. This quote really says it all. The mound builder myth gave a ready-made justification for westward expansion and for the removal of native peoples. See, if some lost race built the mounds, then the Native Americans were just later arrivals who didn't really have any inherent right to the land. I mean, just look at the contrast here. It's night and day. The myth created this fiction of a superior vanished race, all to diminish the people who were actually living on the land. The reality, which is proven by science, is of an enduring, innovative culture that was directly ancestral to modern Native American nations. And by the late 1800s, the Smithsonian Institution had pretty much had enough of the myth. Their big investigation concluded definitively that the skeletons found in the mounds were anatomically identical to contemporary Native Americans. There was no lost race. There never was. And of course, modern DNA analysis has only confirmed this fact again and again. So, science prevails, the myth gets debunked, and the true history is restored. This really should be the triumphant end of the story, right? A moment where this incredible heritage is finally recognized and preserved. But, in a final tragic twist, telling the truth had a devastating, unintended consequence. So, with the fantastical story gone and the scientific truth finally established, was this ancient American history finally safe? The answer, heartbreakingly, is no. In fact, the very act of proving who really built the mounds led directly to their widespread destruction. And this part is just devastating. Once the mounds were no longer these mounds to a mysterious lost race of giants, once they were correctly identified as the work of Native American ancestors, many settlers just lost interest. They weren't special anymore. And so thousands of mounds were simply plowed flat, erased from the landscape forever, taking with them the very evidence of the civilization that had just finally been recognized. The story of the mound builders is such a powerful and, a painful reminder that history isn't just about facts and artifacts. It's also about power, about politics, and about narrative. And it really leaves us with a critical question to think about. What other histories have been buried, not by dirt and time, but by the stories we choose to tell ourselves?